Okay, welcome back to part 4 of the best rifle cartridge series. What is the best all-around rifle cartridge? Now, let's be clear about something. If you want to have the best setup, you're probably going to have more than one rifle, okay? You're probably going to have something like this. A 22-250 for varminting, a 270 for whitetail deer, maybe a 300 Winchester Magnum per elk. Maybe you have a 6.5 Creedmoor for long range. Maybe you just have a 223 and a 308. Whatever the case, you could do a million configurations and figure out how to get, 4 rifles to meet all of your needs. Maybe 3 rifles, maybe 2. So in a perfect world, I don't expect you to end up with just one rifle cartridge or one rifle, one centerfire rifle. But for the purpose of this, we're trying to figure out what's the best all-around perfect choice. So if you could only have one, and if this is the first video that you've clicked on, go back and watch the series so you understand where I'm coming from, what my scale is that I rate these, the 3 main categories that I'm looking at these from that angle. Basically hunting, efficiency, and long range. But through the first 3 videos, we've cut down basically the list to these ones right here. So we have 10 listed here. It's I consider the top 10 best all-around rifle cartridges. Now, I put a little bit more stock, a little bit more weight in the efficiency side of it than I do the hunting or the long range. So 50% of my scale is for efficiency, which basically means you're getting the most bang for the buck. You might not be getting 100% of the performance of another caliber, but you're doing it with less powder in a shorter action with a shorter barrel in a lighter weight gun with less recoil. So that's the kind of efficiency that I'm talking about. But I want a round that also can shoot at long ranges. So every one of these rounds here, you could shoot at 1,000 yards. Are they world-class, break Guinness records for the tightest group at 1,000 yards, win the competitions? Probably not. Maybe some of them are. But the point is, you can shoot at 1,000 yards competently with any of these cartridges, okay? And then they have to be able to hunt with, because I do like to hunt, and they have to be able to hunt with primarily whitetail deer and coyote. But I also want them to be able to potentially hunt mule deer, hog, maybe black bear, and definitely elk. So that's my criteria, and that's how I'm looking at it. So I've got it narrowed down to these 10. Now, like I've said before, if you're thinking 1 or 2 of these shouldn't be on the list, and you're thinking that you know of 3 or 4 more calibers that are way better, you probably have a good point. These are the ones I picked based on the things I have clearly explained in the first 3 videos. So if you have a difference of opinion, that's awesome. And if you were just to randomly give me any of these calibers in a debate format, I could make a good case, for them or against them. You could probably list 10 other calibers that I don't have on this list, and if you put me in a debate format, I could explain why they should be on the list or shouldn't be on the list. So, this is not the definitive list, but as far as I'm concerned, it is. For what I want in a rifle, it is. To have the balance of hunting, efficiency, and long range with a slight skew toward efficiency. These are the best 10 in the world that are not some crazy custom wildcat round or something that you can't hardly get without spending thousands of dollars, okay? So, where do we begin? We're not going to come up with a winner in this video, but we're going to narrow it down. Now, I have a few cartridges here on the table. This is a 30-06. This is a 308, 243, and a 6.5 284. That just happens to be, of these cartridges listed, the 4 that I own. If I had all 10, I would have brought all 10 out. Now, you might think I'm biased because these are the 4 I own. Well, you're correct. That's why I own them, because I think they're awesome. But don't think that means that one of these 4 is going to be the winner, because I'm constantly looking at other cartridges and trying to figure out if they're better and what applications they would be better in and how they, compare to these 4 that I own. Now, this is tough. I'm trying to think how to begin this. Okay. I think the easiest way to compare is to look at these 4 that I have here. So just to give an illustration of what I talked about earlier, you have a 30-06 and a 308. They both have the same caliber bullet. It's a 30 caliber bullet. This particular one is 165 grain. That one is 150 grain, but they're very similar. The difference is obviously the case. So a 308 case is just more efficient than a 30-06 case. They basically have, shrank it down. It's a little shorter. It's just a little bit more efficiently designed. Now, if you compare ballistics to these 2, despite what you've heard, the 30-06 wins, okay? If you're looking for the one with the highest velocity, if you're looking at the one with the most energy especially, the 30-06 wins. There is no question about it. But like we've talked about earlier with all these cases, like a 7mm Mauser versus a 7mm Odd 8, these older, more classic cartridges that were longer will not fit in a short action, loaded to their potential, will probably outperform their shorter, more modern, efficient counterparts. But if you could make the argument that you're getting 85, maybe 90% of the performance in the 308 as you are in the 30-06. But the 30-06 really probably needs at least a 24-inch barrel to get its optimum. I personally have a 22-inch 30-06 barrel, and it's fine. But if you're wanting to get the max velocity and the max potential from a 30-06, you really need to have a 24-inch barrel. 308, yeah, you could increase its velocity by going longer, but really it gets out of it what it needs to and what it advertises with a 22-inch barrel. It's a shorter action, as would be obvious. It also has a shorter barrel, therefore it's going to be a slightly lighter gun. It kicks less, therefore it's going to be more efficient, and it might be funner to shoot for you. Now, if you're shooting 150 grain or 165 grain out of your 30-06, it doesn't kick very bad, but it does have more recoil. Now, the 180 grains out of either of these cartridges are going to kick substantially more, especially out of the 30-06. So in the efficiency lineup or comparison, the 308 clearly wins. But if you say, look, I just don't care about the efficiency. I want the knockdown power. I want the best performance I can get. Specifically maybe in a 180 grain bullet or bigger, well, your 30-06 is going to clearly win. So neither one of these is really a loser. They're both winners. They just go about things in different ways. Now, here's a comparison. Here's a 243. It's the same case. Neck down to 24 caliber. So when you get a lighter bullet in the same case, it's going to have a higher velocity. It has the same amount of powder or very close. Same case, higher velocity, and it's going to be flatter shooting. So, if you're looking for even less recoil, if you're looking for flatter shooting and higher velocity, then you go with a 243 over a 308. If you already think the 308 is plenty efficient enough, and you want more energy and more power and more knockdown power, then go with a 308. So when you get down to these calibers that we've got listed, there's really no right or wrong. It's just what it is you're looking for, okay? The 6.5 284, like I talked about, is a neck down 284. Its whole purpose was to take the 270 case, which is about this same length, maybe slightly longer, and shorten it down and make it more efficient. And it did that. But like we talked about on the last video, it really needs to be in a bolt action rifle with the bullet seated out as far as it can get to reach the potential of it. Well, the 284 then was later necked down to a 6.5, and it's been an extremely accurate long-range competition caliber. And also, a lot of people, myself included, have found out it's awesome for hunting, and it is an efficient round. So, let's just look at this list. Now, despite the fact that I have a 243 and I don't have a 6mm Creedmoor, I'm going to start with that comparison, and I'm going to tell you that the Creedmoor is very interesting. So, just like the 6.5 Creedmoor, the 6mm Creedmoor was designed from the get-go to be long range, which I think is really cool. Now, a 243 can be a good long-range caliber, which basically any one of these calibers, cartridges that you see listed here can do it all. That's the only reason that they're still left. They can be long range. They are efficient to a degree, some of them more than others, and they all can be used for hunting with differing degrees of success depending on your application and depending on what you're looking for. So a 243 loaded with 100 grain bullets, maybe even 105 grain bullets, can be a very, very accurate and good round at long ranges. I have a Savage, which has a 9.25 inch twist rate, which is pretty good for that 100 to 105 grain bullet. So I think a 243 is awesome. I love it. Well, the 6mm Creedmoor comes out with almost every rifle chambered in that round will be either a 1 7.5 inch twist rate or a 7.7 inch twist rate. It literally was geared from the beginning and engineered to shoot the heavier bullets. How much heavier are we talking about? Probably not more than 110 to 115 grains. But when you're at 1,000 yards, that's definitely something. And if you're wanting to hunt with a 243 or a 6mm Creedmoor for deer, that little bit of heavier bullet, I think, would perform very well. For varminting, honestly, you don't need that 100 grain bullet. You could go with a 75 or an 87 grain bullet. It would work just fine. I think either one of those calibers would do the varminting thing just fine. But how do they compare to each other? Well, it's a tough comparison. Strictly long range speaking, I would have to give the edge to the 6mm Creedmoor. Excuse me. Just because it has that heavier twist rate. It's going to shoot the heavier bullets better, okay? Efficiency-wise, man, they're both efficient. The Creedmoor case is slightly shorter than the 308 and the 243 case. They're basically very similar ballistically and in size. As far as being a barrel burner, they're probably going to be about the same, I'm going to assume. I just don't see a whole lot of difference in them, other than that 6mm Creedmoor will shoot the heavier grain bullets better, in theory. Now, if you're getting down there like the 55 grain Winchester bullet for varminting, maybe you don't want that 1 7.5 twist. Maybe you do want a 1 9 twist. probably both would be fine. But honestly, if you're getting down that low, are you really? I mean, is that really what you want a 243 for? I guess that's up to you. So in comparison, which one wins between the 243 and the 6mm Creedmoor? Because I feel like they're too similar to both be on this list. One has got to knock the other off. Ooh, this is a tough one. Well, I think the efficiency is a tie. I think the hunting, honestly, is a tie. I don't see much difference. The only difference I see is the potential long-range benefit to the 6mm Creedmoor with its heavier bullets, which will have a higher ballistic coefficient. So I'm going to give it to the 6mm Creedmoor. That is in no way a downer on the 243. It is a phenomenal cartridge and could easily do all three. Now, let's go over here to this column on the left. 30-06 Springfield, 300 Winchester Magnum, 7mm Magnum. Now, these are definitely hunting rounds, okay? They're not really efficient. Let's just be clear about it. But they're efficient enough to stay on this list to this point. Why are they on the list? Honestly, it's not. They're such phenomenal hunters, but they're also great at long range. The 300 Winchester Magnum has had a long career, for lack of a better term, at being successful at competition at long ranges. The 30-06 years and years ago was also good at that. It's been, it's not the top of the mountain now. There's way more better long range 30 calibers out there. 308, for instance, and 300 Winchester Magnum would both be better at long ranges. But the 30-06 can still handle its own. The 30-06 is such a what's the word? It can do so much. You can shoot a 110 grain bullet. You can go all the way up to a 220 grain bullet. 110 grain bullet, I don't think it's really in its wheelhouse. Can it do it? Yes. Would that be a decent varmint rifle? Probably not. It would do the trick. It would be screaming. I don't think that's really what it's designed for. I really think of the 30-06 between the 150 and 180 grain bullets, maybe a little bit heavier, maybe 200 grain bullets. The 30-06 might be, and this always seems like it changes, but it might be my favorite cartridge of all time. Okay, it's the oldest cartridge on here by quite a ways. It's really spawned almost everything on here that you see came from the 30-06 at one point or another. The 30-06 is an amazing round. When it comes to hunting, it's a little bit of an overkill for coyotes, definitely. It'd be perfect for white-tailed deer, hogs, mule deer, elk. Be very perfect for elk, especially with that 180 grain bullet. Efficiency-wise, it's not horrible, but it's honestly, it was never designed to be efficient. They weren't thinking efficiency. They were thinking military. They were thinking stopping power on people. It was designed by Springfield Armory. It was designed to be a military cartridge, and we used it in World War I and World War II. So it was efficiency at the time wasn't what they were going for. When the 308 later replaced it, it was more of an efficient round that they were going for. But 30-06 is not that efficient. It's mediocre, I would say. It's not terrible. Long range, it's also good. But it's not as good as other cartridges on here. Now, the 7mm Magnum is very similar in energy to the 30-06, but it's going to have the velocity of a 270. So you look at the speed coming out of the barrel of a 270, the flatness of a 270, but give it the energy of a 30-06. Well, that sounds like an awesome combo, and it is. It, however, is not the most efficient round. I would say it's less efficient than the 30-06. That's probably debatable. The case is even bigger than the 30-06 case. It has a better ballistic coefficient bullet in the 284 caliber / 7mm caliber. So it's a great bullet size. It's a massive amount of powder behind it, and it definitely is flat shooting, definitely has power. It has actually more kick than the 30-06, depending on the size of bullet that you're shooting. But the 7 mag is going to be just a little bit extra kick. Now, if you're hunting, it's a phenomenal round, especially long range hunting. If you knew that you're going to be hunting and aiming at larger game at longer ranges, ethical longer ranges, not 1,000 yards or anything like that, the 7mm would be a phenomenal choice, and has been a phenomenal choice. Is it efficient? No, it's not. It's the law of diminishing returns. You're going to get, I'm just going to throw out there, like 15% more performance, for 40% more case capacity, more powder, something like that. So you're adding a lot more powder, a lot more inefficiencies, basically, to get a little bit more performance. Now, if you're all about hunting, it doesn't matter. Now, how does it perform at super long ranges? Well, it holds its energy very well. The bullet is very efficient itself, so it's going to hold its energy. So like I said, at long ranges, it could be a good long-range hunting rifle. What about accuracy? If you tinker with it and you really get it dialed in with the right grain bullet and the right amount of powder and the right barrel length and all that, you probably could, I'm just going to say, you probably could get it to shoot pretty decent at 1,000 yards, but it's never going to be as accurate or consistently accurate as some of these other calibers on this list at 1,000 yards. Same with the 30-06. If you work with it, you can get it pretty decent. The thing about it is, though, how many shots is it going to take? How much practice is it going to take to get you to that point? And do you really want to take that punishment? Unless you have a massive, target style rifle that's going to be heavy and you got a muzzle brake, it's going to be a pounding on your shoulder. And then the 300 Winchester Magnum. Basically, if you want the flat shooting of a 7 mag, but in the 30 caliber, you want to go with the 300 Winchester Magnum. So think of it like it's flat as a 270 or a 7 mag, or close to it at least, but in the 30 caliber, okay? But once again, you've got a ton of powder behind it. You have a big case. It's going to kick even harder than the 7 mag. So it's really not efficient. Now, pound for pound, comparatively, for what it is, it could be considered efficient for what it's trying to do, but compared to these other rounds, it's not, okay? Now, it's also could be a phenomenal long-range hunting caliber. The fact that it retains so much energy and is so flat shooting, it's going to be very good at long ranges. It has been a sniper cartridge in the military in the past, and I believe in some circumstances it still is. So these 3 rounds right here, the 30-06, the 300 Winchester Magnum, and the 7 mag, all 3 are phenomenal in the hunting category. They're good to pretty good in the long range category. They're mediocre to not good in the efficiency category. And since I'm going with efficiency as the predominant attribute of my scale and how I'm going to rank these, I just can't go with any one of these 3. Don't think of it as a negative on them, but in the long term, you want a rifle that you're going to shoot a lot without worrying about the recoil or letting it affect you. They're awesome calibers, but they're just not going to be as fun to shoot as some of these here because of the recoil. And in all honesty, you're going to want probably a 24-inch barrel with a 30-06 at least. Definitely, I would say, to get the optimum performance of the 300 or the 7, you're going to want a 26-inch barrel. They're all standard long actions or magnum long actions. They're all going to be heavier rifles with a lot of kick. So they're, the fact they even made this list and they're not really that efficient should tell you how great of cartridges they are, but they're not going to win this. So here's what we come down to. We got 6 left. Okay. This is tough. This is very, very tough. Let's think about this for a minute. 3 of these are 6.5 caliber. 1 is a 6mm caliber. 1 is a 7mm caliber. And 1 is a 7.62 caliber or 308, which is 30 caliber. That kind of tells you where the most efficient, best ballistic coefficient rounds are. It's right in that 6.5 to 7 caliber round. But don't discount the 30 calibers. There's something to say, especially hunting wise, with having that bigger diameter bullet. Now, the obvious thing here is that you've got 3 264 caliber bullets or 6.5 millimeter bullets. The 260 Remington, the 6.5 Creedmoor, and the 6.5 284. All 3 of these, honestly, if I saw the same challenge from another YouTuber and any one of those 3 won the whole thing, it would be deserving, okay? I feel like one of these 3 need to go today. And then we are going to have the final 5 match up in the next video. But this is a tough one. It really, really is. So let's compare it. The 6.5 Creedmoor, the 260 Remington, and the 6.5 284. Now here's the 6.5 284. The 260 Remington is going to be just like these 2 here. It's going to be the same case, just with a bullet diameter. With a bullet diameter of this one. So that should tell you that the 6.5 284 is going to have a bigger case. The 6.5 Creedmoor is going to be slightly shorter than this case. So in case length, the Creedmoor will be the shortest. The 260 will be the next biggest, and then the 6.5 284 normal will have the most case capacity. Okay, there's not a lot of difference between them, but that is the case differences. Now, a 6.5 284 really it's not going to fit in a short action. Okay, now I don't want you to get the impression that if they don't fit into short action, then they can't win this contest. That's not the case. But when we're talking about efficiency, when you can get the most bang out of your buck, 90% of the performance of other rounds in a shorter case, it is something to take note of. But the 6.5 284 is more of an intermediate length. So like the Mauser actions are just about perfect size. But primarily speaking, you're going to have a longer action or an intermediate action because you're going to want that little bit longer case. And you're going to want a 140 grain bullet probably, and it's going to stick out there a ways. So it's not going to be short action. Now, the 260 is definitely a short action that'll fit in an AR-10 or a short action bolt action rifle. The 6.5 Creedmoor is exactly the same. It was intended when it was designed to fit in a AR-10 sized action. Okay, so case capacity, you've got 2 very similar. 284 normal is a little bit bigger. Okay, you're going to want the same twist rate in all 3 of those, 1 in 8. Okay, they're all going to shoot the 140 grain bullets phenomenally. Now let's just talk about long range. The 260, I know lots of people, not personally, but just have watched videos of people, that the 260 is a phenomenal long range caliber. It's good at 1,000 yards and definitely beyond that as well. The 6.5 Creedmoor, it's the hottest thing out right now. It's super hot. It was designed from the beginning to be a long-range rifle with that particular twist rate and the case size and all that, it was engineered to be a long-range rifle cartridge. So we know that it can do it the trick as well. It's winning contests and all that kind of stuff. 6.5 284 Norma definitely is the same. It, in fact, for a long time had the world record at 1,000 yards for the tightest group. That has since been beaten. But it honestly was known only for its long-range potential. And for many, many years, no retail manufacturing rifles was chambered in that round. It was just simply you had to make your own custom gun, whatever the case. But now Savage, and there might be more, but I know Savage, for instance, makes their 110 in a 6.5 284. So all three are stellar performers at long range. Does any one of those get the edge? Maybe the 6.5 284, just because of the records it had broken years ago. But honestly, they're all very similar. What about efficiency? They're all fairly efficient. They're all shorter. In fact, the original 284 case was probably the first short mag ever. It wasn't called a short mag, but that's really what it was. The 260, of course, is based off the 308 case. It's very it's very efficient. It's what it was designed for. And of course, the Creedmoor is also designed to be shorter and be more efficient. So on the efficiency side, very similar. What about recoil? Well, I probably would say that the Creedmoor and the 260 on the recoil, you couldn't tell the difference. They'd be basically the same. The 6.5 284 is going to have a little bit more recoil. Honestly, it probably wouldn't be enough that you could even tell, but it is going to have slightly more recoil because there's a little bit more power right there. Now, and there's one thing to note on the 6.5 284 specifically. It's known as a barrel burner. There's so much heat and fire going through that some would consider overbore muzzle and barrel that the competition shooters will tell you that at around 600 rounds, maybe up to 1,000, it's going to start to lose a little bit of its accuracy. Not that you can't still hunt with it, whatever the case, but as far as 1,000-yard accuracy, after between 6, 8, maybe 1,000 rounds, it's going to start to lose it. It's going to start to erode the throat of the barrel. And that's, I would say, definitely less than the 260 or the 6.5 Creedmoor. I don't have an exact number, obviously, but I'm going to say they're well over 1,000 on both of them, maybe 1,200, maybe even more than that before they start to erode the barrel. So that is a knock on the 6.5 284. Hunting-wise, well, they're all the same caliber, shooting the same bullet, okay? The 6.5 Creedmoor on paper is going to shoot a little bit slower, not by much. The 260 is going to have a little bit more velocity, and the 6.5 284 is going to have even more velocity still. So it's going to have the most. On a coyote, if you choose to hunt with one of those rounds on a coyote, there's not going to be probably much difference, but probably the 6.5 284 is going to be slightly better just because it's going to have a little bit more pop, just a little bit more energy, a little bit more velocity. It's going to be slightly flatter shooting, not much of a difference, but it gets a very, very minimal edge there. Whitetail deer, it's going to be the same story. They're all going to be fine. If you got the right type of bullet, they're all going to do very similar. Even up to elk, which we know that people have used the 6.5 Creedmoor to hunt elk. It's probably not the best caliber for elk, but there's no question that you could do it. And if you are ethical and your shot placement is good and you're using the right bullets, you could definitely take an elk down fairly easily. On the hunting, you're going to have to give the edge to the 6.5 284 because it's basically the same thing as a Creedmoor or a 260, but with more power, a little bit more power, and a little bit more velocity. like I said on the last video, it's very similar to the PRC. So hunting wise, very slight edge to the 6.5 Long range accuracy, basically a dead heat. If you were to give a slight edge, probably the 6.5 but very, 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 very close. Efficiency, almost a dead heat as well. Probably the 6.5 would be the least efficient. Okay, but we're talking very, very small amount. But because of the barrel burning potential, it would probably be the least efficient. So how in the world am I going to make a decision? I'm honestly thinking about this as I'm talking. Now, let me just back up for a second. If you're looking to get an off-the-shelf gun that the factory ammunition pretty well is phenomenal and ready to go, and you can go to any Walmart in the country and buy this, put it in your $400 or $500 gun, and maybe get the best performance, the Creedmoor is probably the winner. It was designed from the beginning to be it was designed from the beginning to be long range accuracy, okay? And it's super hot right now. It's so popular. There's way more rifles chambered in it than there are the 260, and definitely more than the 6.5 284, okay? The 260 basically does everything that the Creedmoor does, okay? Maybe, this is a big maybe even a little bit better, but basically it's a dead heat. But I'm going to have to give the edge between the Creedmoor and the 260 to the Creedmoor, just because just to run to the store, buy ammo, it's probably going to be better. Now, if you hand load, which I do, my goodness, I don't know, the 260 will probably be slightly better. But just, it's so easy to get a Creedmoor. It's so easy to get good ammunition for it, and it's just so popular that I'm going to give it to the 6.5 Creedmoor over the 260, okay? Now, the 6.5 284 is definitely in there still. So, this is so hard. Now, the 6.5 284, like I said, has that slightly... Apparently, my camera stopped recording at the very end of this video, so thank you for watching. We're down to 5 cartridges now, and we'll continue on the next video. It's getting extremely tough, but we will tackle that on the next video, so stay tuned. Thanks.